Bueno, pues en esta primera serie de entrevistas con personas que primero son más inteligentes que yo respeto mucho en este ambiente, que vamos a hablar de cosas como MMA y diferentes cosas, pues me da mucho gusto tener en esta primera, desde la capital de los Estados Unidos, aquí en la capital de México, a Mr. Luke Thomas. Thank you for doing this, Luke. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for introducing me. I'm sorry, there's a crazy banging going on in my house right now, and I don't mean two people. That's why. Sorry about that. I was a little distracted.
So I saw you had a weekend. Like we both had a weekend, right? With UFC 290, you weren't able to go there, but I want to give people like a little behind the scenes of how your work is, because you're calling an event at Atlantic City. You're also doing morning combat that week. Then you did a whole thing for analysis after the UFC 290. Then you did a video of like Dricus Duplessis the next day. So how does a weekend like that work for you?
Every day is the same as the last, basically. It's one of those kinds of things, right? They just bleed it. Normally, I think in an average person's week, and I say this in a complimentary way, like the days mean different things. It's just that they really don't. Like one day you have to stay up later than the others or something, but they don't really mean anything. My poor wife put up with it, but the basic agreement I've had with her is that if there is free time on the weekend on non-pay-per-view weekends, I can have time to break down film, unless Showtime requires it. Because by the way, one thing you didn't see was we shot a whole thing on Spence and Crawford after MK before we're going to Atlantic City, so that was also on the thing. But for the pay-per-view weekends, I get Sunday to work. So yay me. And then to get that done before MK, I had to get it before 4:30. I mean, none of this is like, all easier than hanging shingles on a roof, like all easier than you name it. But I feel like if you just to compete in this environment, you kind of got to do stuff like this. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I was having kept a little week with some work things when we were in Vegas, and I was just getting out of my room, and there was one of the cleaning ladies, and she's like, I don't know, she just had to get stuff out of her chest, and she started talking to me. It's like, you know what? Every time I'm whining about work, something like this happens in my life. Like someone reminds me that, I mean, yes, it's work, and yes, things should go smoothly and things can go better, but like I should stop complaining about this because I'm getting paid to be on TV. I'm not cleaning rooms. I'm not complaining about unions and stuff. So I get that same sentiment of the shingles. You're calling a lot more boxing now, Luke, with Brian Campbell over at Showtime. I know you've called events before, but had you called boxing before Showtime?
Nope. This is first for me. I had called MMA before. I'd called amateur MMA. I called some decent pro level MMA. I was not good at it. And I don't know that I'm any better in boxing, but I am trying. Showtime has been very generous with their opportunities.
How does that booth work? Who's doing play-by-play? Who's doing and that's because we can't see that in Mexico.
Yeah. So the way it would work here is that Brian, my co-host, on the podcast we kind of share hosting duties. We have the 3 MK shows, and then we also do typically together as a tandem weigh-ins, pressers for some of the bigger Showtime fights. And when we do that, in all cases, we'll just alternate. Like, hey, do you want to host today? Should I host today? But for the calls, I feel like the tandem would work better if we just stick to our strengths. He really wants to be the guy that kind of electrifies the moment in the play-by-play role, and I don't mind speaking less and then kind of chiming in when I see something that I hope is otherwise interesting or relevant to the audience about what's happening. So I would do color in that case. We had a third guy who, when he comes on, like it's not the rule, the rules aren't so strict. But we had obviously they bring on guys from other Showtime roles to come in and do like a 3-man booth with us. So we had Steven Jackson in Atlantic City, and he adds a little bit of flair. He had walked out with Boots Ennis, who was in the main event. You get the idea.
How was it to call a ringside? Because I've called ringside all the time for like MMA, but boxing I have only been able to do it once. And you're so much closer to the ring than the actual cage when you're doing MMA, and I think the impacts are a lot harder. I think just seeing like the repetition of the 10-ounce or the 8-ounce glove is just a little harder to take when you're like literally on the ringside. How was it for you to calling events ringside?
That was one of the most, dude. That day, like as a fan who has been able to work in the industry, and just someone who's been lucky with different opportunities. That was. Could I curse?
Of course.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it was so fucking great. It was so fucking great. I will tell you, MMA has a weird kind of little brother complex at times to boxing, where everyone's like, oh, if an MMA fighter fought a boxer, an MMA fighter would win under those rules, which of course is just in all likelihood very, very true. I mean, I'm not here in any way to challenge it, but it's like so not the fucking point. Like when you actually watch boxing for boxing, and I think for MMA fans, this would take some time. They have a real, it's either this or it's that mentality. But you're asking about watching at ringside, dude. Like one of the things I've really come to appreciate about boxing in sort of working with this job is it's like really changed my perspective on it. Once you get an appreciation that the universe is, from a combative element, much more finite, that is true. But within that finite world, the level of precision is absolutely absurd. I sort of liken it to like what you might, I don't know anything about Japanese cooking, but I've seen Jiro Dreams of Sushi, the Netflix documentary, and all this guy does is make sushi basically in a Tokyo subway station. He's got a Michelin star, maybe more, but the whole point is the entire exercise of his life is just the perfection of a very simple act, basically, and it's getting every little detail right. You get to see that, and when you're up close to it and you can hear it and you can watch these guys do it in person, it is absolutely electrifying. Fuck what you heard about boxing. Yeah, a lot of it, if you're an MMA fan, is not what you're looking for. I understand. But if you're willing to give it a try, I'm telling you, you're going to be rewarded. It's great. Awesome sport.
Dude, in ringside, that's what got me. Just the speed, the precision of the defense, the precision of the punches, the sound of it is just so different. MMA is really weird. Like I called events ringside, and then I went to the PI for a couple of pandemic shows, and just that empty strike is really, it bothered me a little bit at the beginning. Like it's just weird, but in boxing, it's just a different sound, and it's, I don't know, like. I love MMA. I love calling MMA cage side. I've had the opportunity to throughout the years, but I wish I could do more boxing. It's really, really fun. Honestly.
Yeah, I would love to. I've never gone to a fight in Mexico, obviously. I would really, really love. So a boxing fight, I mean. I would really, really love to do that. And I would say also, too, that like, you know, here in the United States, this is changing, obviously, as Mexican MMA grows in popularity and in size and in relevance. But you know, the MMA crowds and the boxing crowds are different, and I'm not going to say one is better than the other necessarily. That's not my point. But you get to see all the different varieties of combat sports fans when you open your mind to other sports that other audiences like. That's what I would say.
Let's talk about that a little, because you've been talking about this with Brian Morning Combat. The Mexican Americans, and I call them Mexican Americans because there is a difference in like the type of audience. They're finally in MMA, and I saw them at UFC 290. It was very weird for me because even in the cane fights, I covered most of cane fights live probably since 155, so that was late 2012. And there were some Mexicans that traveled. There were a bunch of Mexican Americans. This fight, there's some Mexicans, but it's mostly Mexican Americans. It was insane to watch them. As they flooded the casino to New York, I've never seen so many Mexican Americans in a casino together in my entire life. It was so weird. But the environment was exactly that, right? It's the boxing environment that they bring. So different for me in MMA. To see it in MMA, just the way they reacted to songs. There was a guy making his debut, Agachides, Que Mató el Rey by Vicente Fernandez. And the whole arena just went insane. Things like small things like that. I don't know how long it's going to last. The September 16th event for me is it's a very Mexican-American event, not a Mexican event, which there is a difference in the crowd. I don't know how much it's going to last, but if this audience like sticks in MMA, like I get why they're so excited in the UFC.
Dude, I was going to say too, like September could either be a really good or a really bad month for Mexican combat sports, because you've got obviously Grasso on the 16th, and then you got Canelo on the 30th.
Yep.
You know, it's like neither of those are easy fights, so it's going to be interesting. But I'll tell you what, man, like I just think about it for MMA purposes. You know, what MMA did here in the United States, I cannot speak for every part of the world, but certainly in the United States, what it basically did was, I think, a generation of fight fans who were lost from boxing, and this would include largely and predominantly white people, but also all different cross sections of a younger generation that I think can be cut in a few different ways. I think for my generation, it was, you know, largely my demographic that got pulled back into combat sports, and again, that really worked well for them. But when you just think about, for me as an American fight fan, like who are the rock-ribbed fight fans in boxing that you know? And then I think one of the things that UFC and MMA did well was they found a new map. They found the Brazilian map. They found for a time the Canadian map, and these were not the exact same maps. That being said, as we grow, you just think about the rock ribbed fight communities, and like you just can't not talk about Mexico. You just can't. It's not possible, right? If you're being serious about that, and then to watch the talent mature, I think I'll say this: it matured much faster than I thought it would, and I realize the process has been long, and maybe I've not been paying attention, but it just feels like whoa.
No, you're right.
There's like
you're right about that.
Different, right? Okay, so you just feel like it's like in the MMA side, because I to your point about the Mexican American fans, and I can't quite tell the difference, obviously, in the way that you could, but I remember I had the only Mexican American the only major Mexican American star I'd ever seen in Vegas was Canelo. So when you go to his fights, of course, it's like fucking insane, right? Like, he's a huge star. So when I went to the David Benavidez Caleb Plant fight, I wasn't exactly sure what kind of reception he was going to get. Plus, he's got I think he's got Ecuadorian heritage as well. Holy shit, they showed up. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God. And you think to yourself as an MMA fan, dude, how do we get a little bit of that? Like, I want a little bit of that in the audience. The Irish thing has been great for us too, but like, there are our neighbors to the south. How do I want to get a little bit of that? I feel like the UFC, whether they engineered it, whether they lucked into it, whether it's a combination of both, I kind of feel like they've actually done, at least of late, a little bit of a better job leaning into it. And I do feel like, you can speak better to this because I was not at 290, I do feel like it's working. To your point, success in MMA is fleeting. Canelo has been on top for a while. I don't know if you're going to get that in MMA, but it seems to be working, right?
The whole thing here is like I do think they missed the boat in actual Mexico for me. Like, it's insane that Brandon Moreno had 6 consecutive title fights, and it's not even like him fighting in Mexico. They could have bring him like after he won the title in Anaheim. That first defense I got Figueiredo, that could have been in Mexico City. They didn't do it. I get why, and the Mexican people cannot pay the prices the UFC is charging for pay-per-views now at all. Like, I think it's $400 for the cheapest ticket at UFC 290. There's no way a Mexico City crowd can pay that. Fight night, okay, maybe do a fight night. But what I was telling people is like, they had no promotion in Mexico at all. They came, they did a couple of interviews, left. After 6 title fights, Brandon finally got one Mexican sponsor. He signed with Puma Mexico the night before the fight. 6 fights in. So this is the effect of not having a PR agency in Mexico. They used to have someone for commercial purposes that they would like go with brands and try to get the sponsors and then maybe match them up with the correct event or the correct fighter. That worked for a while. That stopped too. And what I was telling people is like, okay, like this can just end in September. Think like this is going to end in September because you have to think worst case scenario, right? I would have loved to have a public event with the 3 of them. Or maybe just Brandon. Like an event where they feel like the Mexican crowd was able to welcome them in their country, was able to celebrate him in the country. I think Brandon had more public events in Spain when they did the whole thing with La Liga than he did in Mexico City. He had some in Tijuana, but it was for him. They were like the local soccer team, the Xolos. It was for him. It wasn't made by the UFC and stuff. And that's my whole thing, because it's insane. And seeing the fights, like when I saw the fights, okay, like Brandon could have fought in Mexico. They didn't make that happen. Alexa could have fought in Mexico. They're not going to make that happen. And I get it. They're seeing the Mexican American dollars come in. Mexican American crowds can spend. And if you see Las Vegas, we're like seeing the schedule for concerts for the Independence Day weekend, which always happens. Like when there's boxing and stuff, there's always concerts. So the biggest artists in Mexico are going to be there. It's going to be, there's a soap opera from when we were kids. We were like 28 something, Rebelde. They're going to be there. Alejandro Fernandez, the son of Vicente Fernandez, 3 dates in Vegas. Luis Miguel, 3 dates in Vegas. Marco Antonio Solis, 2 dates in Vegas. Gloria Trevi, 2 dates in Vegas. All from the 14th to the 18th. And this is just for Mexican Americans. And it's absolutely fine to call it a Mexican event and stuff. Just, I think there's just a difference between the audiences. I would have just liked for them to have like a public thing in Mexico, because I knew how this could be so fleeting, right? Like I thought Brandon could have won this Saturday. Maybe he hadn't broken his ankle, he could have won. I have Volk as a favorite. I had Amanda as a favorite over Irene, obviously. And I don't know what's going to happen in September. But that's the whole thing, right? Like you should plan worst case scenario. And when it's hot, you do it. Because like if Alexa loses on the 16th, done. Like your boat sailed. And you have that boat since like the end of 2021.
So it's so funny you bring this up, because this is something you may know, but you got to put yourself in my shoes for a minute. Like some of this stuff doesn't automatically, I'm not automatically clued in. I have to have it explained to me. So like, for example, I've been talking to Spanish-speaking YouTube creators, and we compared notes with like what my CPM looked like and what theirs looked like, and where much of their traffic was coming from and much of my traffic was coming from. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of differences. But the biggest one was this: I did not realize how significant the drop-off was. If the vast majority, if you're an American guy like me, and your audience is majority, let's say U.S., or some of it's going to be from Canada, other English-speaking countries, UK, stuff like that, right? Australia, maybe, obviously, more recently. The amount of money advertisers pay for that content is vastly higher than if your audience comes from Mexico or even other Spanish-speaking parts of South America. Spain is better, still not quite as good as the U.S., but it's certainly better. So I can see why the UFC now, like before, I didn't even like quite get it. Like, why would you not go and do all this stuff? I just didn't realize. I'm not saying that the lack of the market utterly justifies their decision, but I couldn't comprehend it before. I can sort of get an idea now. But I guess my pushback on this would be a little bit, I realized that Canelo went back to Guadalajara, right? Because it was the John Ryder mandatory. And he did it in a big-ass stadium. Don't you think the UFC could fill a stadium in Mexico with the right card?
Well, they could. There's not a roof stadium in the entire country. So that's a problem. And
so
there's
they don't want to risk it.
They don't want to risk it. And there's just one arena they can use in the entire country. So there's only 2 arenas in Mexico that can like host an NBA game, and they have all the technological advantages, and even like the roof so they can hang their lighting rig and stuff. And there's one in Mexico City and one in Monterrey. They've been to both. They didn't like the Monterrey crowd. They didn't like the Monterrey arena, so they only do events here in Mexico City. So 20,000 seater.
Is that the one where they were fucking shit? It was the Jeremy Stevens one?
That's the one. And the NBA comes here every year. It's a 20,000 seater. It's pretty big. But I get not doing a pay-per-view. There's no way we can pay those prices. At all. And it's okay. It's okay to like differentiate audiences. I think you still should be touching base with Mexico. It's your company. It's your money.
Right?
Yeah, you can absolutely do. That's my whole thing. Like, you could have done a fight night. You could have done they kind of tried late to do the September 16th card. So from what I've heard is they didn't know about Independence Day weekend. They had no idea that September 16th is Independence Day in Mexico. They were clued in. They were clued in because Lupi Godinez asked to fight in the 16th. And they're like, why she asked? Like, that's such a random date. And then someone told them, oh, that's Independence Day in Mexico. Huh. And by the time they reacted, like, they weren't able to get a date, because Mexico City, when you see, like, the list of shows here, it's New York. It's LA. Every single big tour in the world comes through here. Taylor Swift is doing 4 dates, and they sold out in a day. Luis Miguel is doing, like, 20,000 seaters. Like, everyone's here, so they couldn't get a date. Because that was kind of the plan. And that would have been nice. Like, do a fight night, bring all the champions, have a bunch of, like, free events, get the people to know them, to see them. When Kane came, there were, like, a bunch of signings every single time. That man was a saint because he sat through hours of shaking hands and signing things. But that's the thing I missed. And I knew as a Mexican-American audience in Vegas, not only, I say this half jokingly, but not only like seeing them, like I've lived in the U.S. for periods. My father was an immigrant. My brother's a U.S. citizen. One of my other brother lived in the U.S. for a while. When Trump came into the arena, he wasn't booed. And it was a full-on Mexican audience. He would have been booed out of the stadium. And that's where we're like, Mexican Americans. Because they don't care. Yeah. Like, some of them clap or some of them boo. They don't care. They really don't care. Mexicans, they would just boo him out of the thing.
Yeah, they would boo him out. Yeah, I mean, I would take your word for it. Also, I mean, you know, there's, I don't know exactly what the demo was. I was there the night that Jorge Masvidal fought Nate Diaz in New York. Trump got I would say, a different reception there. He got a much more favorable one, if we're just being honest, at UFC 290. The BMF title that night in New York, because New York's what we would call a bluer state when you're talking about the political map. I know you know that, but for your audience's sake. So, you know, I think it's fair to say that American Latinos in general skew in a lot of different political directions, and probably the ones that watch MMA are going to be a little bit more right-wing in general.
Yeah. No, and what you were saying about this generation being ahead of the curve, and I've talked to people about this during the weekend, during UFC 90, I'm completely agree with you. So I saw them in like 3 pieces. I saw Goyito Perez is still like one of the most important figures in Mexican MMA. I know like American audiences maybe don't know this. because he was the first Mexican-born and Mexican-trained fighter to go into the UFC. There were 6 Mexican-born fighters before him, but they moved to the U.S. very young, and they trained in the U.S. and they got wrestling classes in the U.S. American gyms like Efrain Escudero, Will Campuzano, those guys. And then Goyito was seen as like the first Mexican-trained fighter to be there. So the fact that he was there at Jackson Wink MMA when they did the first development program, like they all saw him like their idol. And at the end of the day, like Goyito maybe didn't get close to a title, but he still like left the UFC 7-2. He still holds records. He still has like the fastest knockout in the bantamweight division. Only bantamweight ever in the Sufa era to start their career with 3 first-round finishes. 7-2, went on a 3-fight win streak when he left, when they didn't offer him a better contract. So that was one. And then I thought this generation of Yair, Brandon, Alexa, Irene, they would have long careers, 10 fights, 12 fights, 15 fights, challenge for a title someday, but maybe not win a title. And then the generation of Yasmin Jauregui and all of them, they were going to be the champions. So what I tell people is like, for me, the 3 of them winning championships, Irene getting a championship fight, is like, this is icing on the cake. This generation is so ahead of the curve. Look, I've covered Brandon for over 10 years. I knew he was a good fighter. I knew he could get better. I never dreamed of seeing him in 6 consecutive title fights ever.
Right. I never saw that coming, if I could be totally honest with you. Man, I just got to say, like, I remember back in the day, there was like, I could think of, if I'm thinking of like UFC 40 era, UFC 30.
Yeah.
Trying to think in my mind the Spanish speakers. I can only think of 2. Tony D'Souza out of Peru, and then Ivan Menjivar. And I don't even know where he's from. I think like Honduras or something like that.
I think it's Salvador.
It's Salvador. That's right. Central American country. And that was it. And they called him Ivan Menjivar. You know what I mean? Like, the notion that a Mexican fighter would beat a Brazilian fighter was just unfathomable. Like, you couldn't find a person, you know. And to this day, obviously, Brazil remains a powerhouse, and as well they should. But, you know, to your point, the speed of improvement has been absolutely shocking. And so when you combine it, again, from my perspective, from my vantage point, when you begin to see like how good they're getting, and again, I think one of the telltale signs to your point is how good they're getting on both sides of the equation, on the male and female side of the game, right? It's not lopsided. It's not just heavyweights. I mean, obviously Mexico's going to skew a little bit on the smaller side, in fairness to the average American, but in size, but the how rapid it's been. And then I'm sure that there's still a long way to go, but it does appear from the outside looking in that there is this infrastructure that's being built. I don't know so much about the level of the regional shows, but you know, we can name big gyms in Mexico now, right? As an American, like you know about Entrim Gym, for example. Yeah. You know about some of the bigger places that produce talent, and so you combine with how good that talent looks, how evenly distributed it is, and all this in the ways it could be, and then you see this other fan base begin to come around, and it all begin to work. I know it feels like it's this window or nothing, but just being candid, it doesn't feel like it's this window or nothing. It feels like, hard to say when your country's going to have another UFC champion. These are very difficult titles to get. But like, is my money on one happening before 2025? Yes, I would bet that there would be one. Absolutely, I would bet that. So we'll have to see what that looks like. But I think that they're set up for success for a long time to come. How will they maximize potential? We'll see.
Just moving away from like what's happening in MMA now, you were talking about your family and how like difficult it is to get free time with them, just so people can get this perspective. I'm lucky because I'm married to someone who used to do my exact job, used to work in TV. There's still like a little conflict sometimes, but she understands. Your wife has not done this job. She works in something completely different. How difficult is it to you, like having to build a brand, having to build a new morning comeback brand the last few years, doing play-by-play now and analysis? How difficult is it for you to balance that with your family now?
Yeah, man, it's the hardest thing because, you know, dude, like, people say things to you when you become a dad, and it's hard to really process. Like, you can noodle through what they're saying to you as like, oh, that's true, but you have to see it before the gravity of it really begins to be imparted. And the one thing you keep hearing is like, oh, it goes fast. and it does go fast. And the other thing, like again, these are things I had to pick up. I didn't grow up with like a huge family. I grew up, a very splintered one. So like I was never around cousins. I'm the youngest of my two siblings, and my first sibling is like 10 years older than me. So there's like a considerable distance, and so I never had a big family. So like a lot of this was just all new to me. And then they would tell you like, your kid worships you within the first 10 years of their life, but after that they begin to understandably make their own life. Like, so you got like this 10 or 11 or 12 year window, whatever it is, where like that's your prime time with your kid. The thing that hurts me is not that I'm unable to make time. I actually feel pretty good about that. It's just that I used to not have to worry about that. I used to just, I didn't listen, man, I don't recommend anyone do what I did in my 30s, which is I just punted on my life. You know what I mean? I really just did. I just punted on except for my wife. I didn't do that. But, like punting time with friends, punting time with making time for family. I punted on all of that shit. And, did it work? Did it not? I don't know. Some of it worked. A lot of it didn't. And so now I'm here at this spot where, to your point, I got all these demands. The thing that hurts me is like the extra research I was able to do, like the extra tape watching, the extra, rabbit hole I used to just spend 2 hours going down that would really sharpen me up. All that is gone because I just refuse. I refuse to give these 10 years away, dude. There's going to be the very best 10 that I got with her. So I'm just, I've started waking up. Here's the worst part, dude. I've been a night owl my whole life. Right up until my daughter was born, I was a night owl. Like that's exactly the way it is. And now, dude, I like crave getting up at 30 because it's the only fucking time I have all day. It's crazy.
Yeah, I like the thing about punting your 30s. We're the same age, so like that cut deep. And same thing. Like I used to sleep from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then live from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. And when Fernanda moved in with me 3 years ago, like now I wake up at 7 to walk the dogs. Which for me, being awake at 7 a.m. is like, I'm still not used to it. I want to know how integrated you are with your South American family. So this is the most important question ever, Luke. Okay. Do you have WhatsApp on your phone, and how easily is it accessible on your menu?
Okay, so here's my phone.
Yep.
Okay. This is my home screen. Can you see?
There you go. Yep.
There you go. It's on the front of my home screen.
There you go. That's how you know you have South American family. Because you have WhatsApp on the front of your phone.
Dude, and this is the crazy part too. Like I didn't realize this. So here, it's just a way to keep in touch with them. In other words, if I'm in Estados Unidos and they're over there, that's how I just keep in touch. So, hey, here's a video of my daughter, blah, blah, blah. But dude, when you go there, motherfucker, they don't send emails. They send messages on WhatsApp. You know what I mean? Like you do all your like financial transactions through that. Like, dude, people live their life on WhatsApp in South America. Here in the States, it is not like that at all. It was like a bit of a culture shock seeing that.
Yeah, for us, but then I with PRs like, hey, like, do you have WhatsApp? What's that? It's always like that. And the whole thing's like, texting was so expensive in Mexico and South America forever. So when data started, WhatsApp was just the quickest and the cheapest way to do it. So that's why it's the test of like how South American integrated you are, having WhatsApp in your thing.
Dude, seriously true. I could not imagine going to South America and trying to like, talk to hotels ahead of time or book rides or do any kind of tourism without WhatsApp. Can you imagine how fucking hard that would be? Dude,
it's
like imagine even you had to do that, like as a native, no WhatsApp at all. You'd be like, fuck, what am I going to do?
I literally do everything in WhatsApp, and when the times I've been lucky to be in Colombia, we do everything through WhatsApp, like even getting picked up from the airport and stuff. Like everything's through WhatsApp. Just a couple of quick more questions, Luke, before I let you go. Thank you so much for doing this and for being the first invited here in this thing I'm trying to do. Because now that I'm not doing like journalism full-time on MMA, I'm just hosting TV and doing play-by-play. I'm trying to do things I like. I no longer care like about how many people watch them. I just want to do things I like with my free time, and this is a thing that I think I'm enjoying doing now, doing this kind of interviews. On your side, you were talking about, and we've been talking about too this side, how a journalism just going into TikTok, going into influencers, which has its conflicts and stuff, but what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge of that? We were about the same age. We were in college. The whole thing was agenda setting, how the 24 hours news cycle gets paid or has an interest or pushes one story or whatever. And now you're seeing this like on that side, right? Like, okay, what's the trending topic? Oh, this. So I'm going to push this. I don't even believe in this. I don't know about this. Maybe it's a conspiracy theory. Maybe it's a lie, but I'm going to push it because it's going to get me clicks, notoriety, and stuff. As we move to like getting our news on that side, like what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge for it?
The thing that I think that I worry about the most is just I won't say the uselessness of journalism, because that's obviously not what I mean. But what I would say is, I don't call myself a journalist because I don't think I do the kind of work that justifies the title. But certainly at one point I did. I do think I am media, and I think there's a difference. And not to say that one can't be valued. There's only one way to have value. But I do believe that there should be a difference.
Yeah.
I just point this out to say, the thing that I think about the most is we have the influencer world is like journalism without any of the baggage, right? Because it doesn't care about, not telling you the truth per se, but it doesn't care about doing anything other than laundering the power version of truth. And of course, there could be some truth to it. It's not to say that every part of it is bad faith, but it is inherently about access. It is inherently about attachment to power. And journalism on some level is supposed to be a questioning of power. It is supposed to be a questioning of authority. It's supposed to be like, is what the people who are the biggest and the strongest in this industry, are they doing the right thing by you? And you can actually get journalism, and you can get influencer media that look very similar, but that orientation between all things power are good. And dude, like, you tell me where the market is for that. You know the answer on that one very well. The market is, of course, always going to be the attachment to power. And dude, it's not even in that. Just think about this. Like, someone, I grew up in the 80s, and so I realize this is a very flawed man, but you can't take all my childhood romantic ideas from me. I grew up as a kid who I kind of idolized Arnold Schwarzenegger. And then as I got to the military and I wanted to like weightlifting, I got his encyclopedia. And he has been a source of inspiration for a very long time. And someone asked me if I had watched his documentary on Netflix. And I tried, dude. I really tried. But like, you know, it's him telling his own story. This is just fundamentally not honest. The only time, look at the Notorious documentary, he has to approve it. Any kind of documentary about someone powerful in sports or any kind of celebrity related issue, they all sign off on their own documentaries. J Balvin put out one on Amazon that was the most laundered fucking thing you'd ever seen in your life. And so this is now the line. The line is that they have removed all need to have power questioned. Is there going to be a market? I really don't know. And that's pretty terrifying.
It is, I don't know what it's going to be. And it's changed so much for us, like in the last 20 years. Like I've done production for my entire professional career, and it's changed so much in the last 20 years. And I have to be real. Like this last one, like all of them, like I kind of have seen them coming. This one, like I didn't see it coming.
Right.
It was so quick. Like transition was so, because we're like in the, pivot to video, and then we knew it was bullshit, and it was bullshit. And then this one just happened like in like a year and a half or a year. Like we're just there. And it's just so sudden, and it does terrify me a little bit, to be honest about. A couple of quick questions before we're done, Luke, just on your like likings and stuff. What is your favorite MMA fight?
Favorite MMA fight?
I can tell you mine if that helps.
Go ahead.
It's Tony Ferguson against Rafael dos Anjos here in Mexico City.
Oh, yeah.
Tony beat RDA in the fucking
sky for 5 rounds. Yeah. That might be Tony Ferguson's best win.
I think it is. I think absolutely it is.
Yeah. That was amazing what he did in that fight. You know what? I wouldn't even put it up there as like best ever, but I'll just say sentimental attachment. One I have a sentimental attachment to has got to be Carl Parisian and Diego Sanchez. One of the different era of MMA. So what's kind of funny is guys would get taken down and then decide to wall walk. And in this fight, you see them like actively play guard. So it's a different kind of thing. But dude, an absolute 3-round dog fight between two guys with very different styles, kind of coming and going, real grind moment. Fun fight. I've
called judo for years, and I've been able to call into Olympic Games, so preparation is near and dear to my heart. Your favorite fighter of all time?
Favorite fight? Ooh. Man. I've been lucky to be able to cover for better or for worse, John Jones's career. Like, I feel good about being in that area. I don't know if I call him here's the thing. It's like, as a fan, who's my favorite? I don't really know how to. I know this is going to be unsatisfying. I don't know, but like, Robbie just retired. I feel lucky to have seen Robbie's career almost beginning to end. John has been pretty important to be around for that. So I'm pretty grateful that I got to see watch him compete, I guess.
Look, one of my greatest accomplishments as an interviewer is I made Robbie Lawler chuckle once, earnestly. And I'll take that to my grave. It was so fun. You,
That's
like me,
good.
love music. What is your favorite band right now?
Ooh.
Not forever, today, like 2023. What are you listening to?
Ooh. Well, you know what? I hear metal is popular in Mexico. So I don't know.
We have a gigantic
we'll
festival. I love metal. It's not all I listen. I'm more of a punk rocker, like wearing my Bad Religion shirt. But we have a gigantic metal festival here every year. People love it.
Very good. If you're asking me from my personal band right now, probably, Pantera is touring, but half the members are like literally dead, so maybe not them. I'd say, you know what? I'd say Dying Fetus. Actually, it's an atrocious name. I really understand it, but hey, it's good music to exercise to. It makes me happy. So there you go.
Oh, I've heard of it. It's not my type of metal. That's a little blast beats every single time. It's a little too much for me. But,
yes,
but I love it. And one last one. The piece of media, it can be a book, it can be a painting, a movie, TV show, a clip, whatever. The last piece of media you remember that made you emotional. And I'm not saying like crying, like just like even angry, even upset, maybe crying. Like, what is the last thing that you watched? You're like, oh, this is getting me a little emotional here.
Man, well, dude, I'll tell you my answer, but how about the Alexandre Pantoja post-fight response about, are you proud of me now, Dad? Like, dude, that one shook me to my core. That was like, ooh, that is a lot. If you're asking about like movies or something like that, this might sound stupid, but it really did matter to me, and I wasn't expecting it. I took my daughter to see the new Miles Morales Spider-Man, the cartoon one, and it's the second of the two,
which is really good.
It's fantastic, right? It's fantastic. Hard to complain about it. In fact, the guy who plays Spider-Man in the movies, the British kid who does a very good American accent, by the way, he outed himself as a Barcelona fan. So count me as a Miles Morales Spider-Man. I now prefer him. But if I can be serious for a moment, I wasn't expecting it. And the mother in the movie, I believe the character is Dominican. Yeah. And they live in New York City. Many Dominicans there, and she's speaking Spanish to her son, who is Spider-Man. And my daughter just turned to me and she goes, Spider-Man's mommy is speaking Spanish like my mommy. And I was like it kind of caught me there right in the middle. And I don't know, man. I don't know exactly what I felt, but I felt so happy for her. I felt I don't know. Even talking about it, it's like it's right here. It's just seeing her delighted with that, I suppose, made me so happy. Yeah. Oh,
that's amazing. I love that for you two guys. I love it. That's pretty fucking cool. I appreciate your time.
I almost cried just talking about it just now. It's crazy. It's crazy. Dude, I'm getting old. I'm getting so fucking old. It's unbelievable.
Being 43 is kind of weird, look. You have to admit it, right?
Dude, everyone like who's in their 20s, like, oh, I'm 33 now. I'm feeling it. I'm getting older. I'm like, dude, shut the fuck up. You don't know shit until you've fallen off the cliff that is 40. Like, once you hit that bitch, you're like in free fall. Come on.
Look, I'm not a napper. The other day I lay down on the couch and I was out for 2 hours. And I'm not a napper. And I've always been an insomniac. I never sleep. And it's like, I'm just going to watch out. So I get it. Amazing. I really appreciate your time, Luke. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for everything. And personally, me, thank you for like always sharing my content. Thank you for always giving us space. Thank you for keeping an eye on Latin America. We really appreciate it down here. And personal note, me, you and Esther Lynn, nicest people I ever met in the UFC press room. There's a lot of nice people there, but you two, Esther and you, and I really appreciated that at the time. So thank you very much.
Hey man, I wish I could have gone to 290. I would have loved to have seen you, but hopefully we can make time at some point in the future. Either way, thank you for having me. And hard to compete with how nice Esther is. I'll give her the gold medal, but I'm happy to be on the podium just the same, dude. Keep doing your thing, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it.